you aren't being a proper woman, therefore you must be a witch. You must be a witch.
Hi friends, hi Sarah, happy full moon and thanks.
I want to just say hi, Risa, and thank you so much for having me. I feel really honored. This podcast is very special. I'm sure you know that. So I feel honored and delighted to be a part of it. My name is Sarah Faith Gottesdiener, and I am a queer Jewish witch living in Los Angeles. I have 2 dogs and a beloved sweetheart that I live with, and I identify as an artist, a creative person. I've been teaching about the moon and tarot and energy and other things for a minute, for about 5 years. I've been a professional tarot reader since 2012, and I've written something like 9 self-published works that center around collaborating with the cycles and rhythms of the moon and the seasons in the Northern Hemisphere. And I just released a book, an evergreen book about the moon, shockingly called The Moon Book, which is a guide to yeah, I know. I'm really creative here, which is a guide to working with energy and rhythm and cycles and lunar magic, as well as self-development and practical tips. And yeah, that's what a lot of my sort of outward facing work has been about for about the, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. It's been about energy, intuition, and yeah, that's the, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. It's been about energy, intuition, magic, tarot, and lunar living. Which is not something I ever planned, by the way. Like I never thought I'd be saying that. Like, you know.
Well, I want to come back to that because we had a listener write in recently about sort of the fear of coming out as someone who works in magic or coming out as a witch. And so I want to come back to that, how that transition was for you. But can you start, because I'm so curious about this, with talking about how your relationship with the moon started?
Yeah. I think every single human has their own relationship with the moon, with the sun, with the elements. Mine began because I was a witch, because I met witches in my early 20s, like real life witches, and they were my friends, and they really started teaching me that lunar magic was really potent. And I sort of put it away for the first 3 or 4 years of my magical development. And I came back around to it, and I decided to begin working with the moon in my own particular way, which is, well, it's holographic. There are no end to the different ways we can work with the moon. But for our listeners' purposes, it's around working with one intention around one lunation. So that would be new moon to new moon, or full moon to full moon, or dark moon to dark moon, around one specific intention. And flowing with the traditional suggestions of light and energy accumulating and light and energy dissipating, going external, going internal, breathing in, breathing out. It's very natural to all of us. It mimics the seasons. And so I tried doing that and pairing that with my magical practice, which before that had been mildly undisciplined. And the results that I got was like, couldn't even believe it. And so I worked through the lunar phases with a variety of different intentions. And I was like, wow, like I'm onto something here. Like the moon is onto something. And it really opened my intuition. It opened my healing. It opened up so much for me. And after about 5 years of praxis, I began teaching about it. And for me, the moon is an illustration of the earth, the sun, and the moon. It's an illustration of fire, water, earth, air. It is a correspondence that is a correspondence to our subconscious, our unconscious, and our conscious all in one. And I find that an incredibly potent site of reclamation, of healing, and of influence. And that's what I teach, and that is what I continue to sort of base a lot of the core healing, different levels of consciousness. This is what witches do. And so, the moon is one of our besties in this regard. So that's a little bit of how I view
Yeah.
the moon.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, one of the things I love about your book, the Moon Book, Lunar Magic to Change Your Life, I got really, really into it. I was really enjoying. I got a digital copy, and then I got my hands on a beautiful hardcover copy that you designed, and is beautifully designed. Um, there's something that's so practical about it, which is so funny to say about magic, but for me, I'm always thinking about time and our experience to time. And as a person who menstruates, I feel like I'm pretty like, and I like, painfully, like I'm really painfully aware of time. And marking out my relationship to time in a more concrete way with the moon cycles has been a part of my praxis that's like really given me a lot of power. And so to get my hands on your book and be like, oh shit, like there's this whole range of work. You started out by saying it's holographic. There's this whole scape of work that I can do around each stage of the moon. And for me, that's a really empowering idea. I'm excited for our listeners to discover that. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, just the relationship in with bodies of water, with our own bodies? Like, how do you feel like we're sort of physically being written on by the moon?
That's such an incredible question. You talked about it a bit when you shared where, the moon is about bodies because we are anywhere between like 50 and 70% water, which depending on, what's going on, babies are more water, and then we become less water as we age. And, for folks who mention, it's true. No, really, like babies are most watery. And then as we get older, elders are less watery. For folks who menstruate, there can be a real specific correlation between menstrual cycles and the moon. And I don't mean, oh, you bleed on a full moon, or oh, you bleed on a new moon. I just mean a process of energy building, feeling like you have more energy, and then bleeding and sort of feeling like you have less energy or maybe need to go more internally. Folks who menstruate can probably understand what I'm talking about, especially when there's these sort of emotional tides as it were, that also imprint on the body as well. I think, like, just to sort of zoom out, I feel like the stars, the sun, the moon are imprinted on all of us because since the dawn of time, human beings have worked with the stars, the sun, the moon in order to situate themselves, to cast rituals, to cast spells in the realm of folklore, lunar and solar and star-centered deities. We've been dancing with the sun, the moon, and the stars for as long as we've had a consciousness. So we have this imprint of the moon in the sense that Risa, your great, 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 great grandparent, who you don't know their name and you don't know where they lived, had a relationship with the moon. They looked up and they saw the moon. They saw the sun. They saw the stars. And there's this really rich, in my opinion, accumulation of awe and wonder and enchantment that we have with the elements. In particular, I think, the moon and the sun and the stars. So there's that, right? There's this really long history also, or herstory of the moon and agriculture and herbalism and doulas and medical workers and sex workers and ritualists and witches and shamans and other magical practitioners, because so many of these folks dwelled and dwell in the realm of night. And the moon is the queen of the night. So there's that relationship as well. And then, of course, we have our own energetic ebbs and flows. The moon controls the tides in all bodies of water, the water tables, oceans, and ourselves. So lunar gardening has long been a practice. The moon has really been linked to agriculture for thousands and thousands of years. There are still folks who garden with the moon, and we are nature. Our bodies have water in them. We are sensitive to light. We are sensitive to rhythms. Whether you menstruate or not, you are an emotional creature. So you are going to have your own particular relationship with the site that the moon helps us discover, uncover, and flow with.
And it's a lovely way of thinking about change in our lives too, right? Like there's such this sort of forward impulse, impetus sort of around this in this pressing stage of capital that we're in. But the way you talk about moon work is so kind of liberating from that, because it's like, well, we're going to do something for one cycle. No, we're going to do another cycle. We're just going to keep kind of going in these beautiful spirals, and that's okay. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing about lunar living. It is in direct opposition to capitalism and to linear time and to bad or good, on and off, alive or dead, all of these binaries. The moon is not a binary. There's, the other planet that we can see light being reflected off of, or well, the moon isn't a planet, but the other celestial body that we can see light being reflected off of is Venus. And I find it really interesting that the more traditional celestial bodies, at least in like a Western pantheon way, are feminine. And that a lot of times the binary can sometimes be correlated with a patriarchal way of thinking. And as well as I do, everyone here with us today knows that capitalism, it ain't it, and It's been embedded in us from feeling guilty when we rest, or feeling shame or comparison because we're not doing enough, or we're not, as this or as that as someone else. It's not natural. I don't think that the binary, and I don't think that capitalism is a natural state for us. And the seasons and the cycles and the patterns of the cosmos and the stars and the sun and the moon is this reminder that what is completely natural is for us to go through processes of dynamic change and to move into different states of being. And these different states of being are not bad or good. Rest, or feeling like you need to move through you for a month or a few months is not bad. But we put these prescriptions and these judgments on rest, on, indies. And that's really harmful. And for me, so much of doing lunar work is this reminder that we're in different phases. And then sometimes it's time for us to run a marathon. It's time for us to that production and creating things and connecting and pollinating isn't natural. It's completely natural. And also, so is rest, so is grief.
Can you talk about what you feel like the role of magic is right now?
Wow, that's a big question, Risa. I need to hear what you're going to say after I talk. Do you promise? Yeah, will you go after you?
Just like think for a sec. But yeah.
So there's so many different. So I'm just going to kind of riff, and then I'll pause, and maybe we can sort of build a cauldron together. The first thing that came to my mind is...
I love that.
Okay, great. The first thing that came to my mind is that, as he says, magic helps us re-enchant the world. There was a time when we were children, although not all of us had the privilege of a supported childhood, but there was a time, at least for me, when I was a child, and what was first and foremost was imagination, was going to different lands in my brain with my helpers, with the stuffed animals I would, create in my bedroom and have stories with. And I was connected in some way, imagination, connected to myself, connected to the realm of different possibilities. And I think that is one of the roles of magic, that it helps connect us to our imaginations, to understanding who we truly are apart from systems of oppression. And magic can give us some insights and some tools of how to live lives that are in alignment with some of our soul's purpose and some of our yearnings and some of our desires. The other thing that speaks to me, I think I've got three. And then I'll pause and let you speak. The other thing is this ancestral connection. And I think that, and I've got some Russian in me as well. I'm Eastern European is what I'm trying to say. And, I think that a lot, I can only speak for white people here. I can only speak for myself as a white person. Our ancestral magic is really potent and it's really powerful. And it doesn't mean that we have to even know where we came from or exactly what was going on in our ancestral line, because a lot of us don't have that privilege. Myself, I have a great on both sides, and that's what I've got. And I've got very little in terms of certain information. But I've been doing a lot of ancestral remediation. Not a lot, but I've been doing more. Let's put it that way. I've been doing more ancestral remediation in the last 2 years than I kind of ever have. And it's slow going, and it's can sometimes be painful. And also, it's really important for us to connect to our ancestors, perhaps have caused harm or who assimilated. We're separated from some kind of spiritual practice that was connected with the land or connected with their geographic or, I don't want to say religious, I'm thinking of Jewish people right now. They're, the people that they were a part of. And so for me, it's been magic and researching and connecting with the folklore of Eastern Europe and connecting with my ancestors in trance and in meditation has been really important. And also on that addendum, connecting with my place where I live right now, which is full of succulents and raven and coyote and pastel sunsets. That also has been this interesting practice. And the third thing that I just want to put out there, which everyone knows who's listening to this show, because they're magical practitioners, which is that when magic connects us to other worlds, so magic connects us to, and I mean this really loosely, magic connects us to our muses, our creativity, our intuition, spirit guides, nature, animal helpers, plant helpers, ancestral helpers, the sun, the stars, the moon. And when we connect to that greater universe, we are both humbled, we are interwoven with a web of being that has been pulsating for eons. And we are both humbled, and also we are given the support and the insight we need to become the most empowered, most authentic version of ourselves, most empowered, most authentic version of ourselves. We can resist psychic death. We can stand up for what we believe in, and we can protect those who are most vulnerable, and we can live our lives in the spirit of service, however that looks for you. I'm not saying it's going to land differently for every single person. And magic has given me the tools to create a life in which, and that in itself has really beautiful aspect of invest.
I mean, all of what you just said is so empowering and accurate. I will put in the cauldron of the answer of this question from my perspective also. I came to magic because and I think this is part of its role right now for many people. I didn't have a faith, you know. I was raised by social justice Christians, and their faith was like pretty great, but I just can't with all the child rape and lying and colonialism stuff. So that one's not for me. And I just didn't have one, and I'm like mostly atheist, but with a personal relationship to a being, So for me, it was just always there. And so I think that's part of the role for this thing we call magic now, is like there's so many of us, I think a growing majority of us, that are like, I need a relationship with the universe, and I don't want any dogma or idea. Like about magic and crafting is like, it's more about how you do it than what you believe. Like you don't really have to believe in anybody else's gods or
Oh,
a
yeah.
universal view. It's more
No
about
gods,
practice,
no masters. Yeah.
and so that's so fucking yeah, exactly. So I think that fills a really deep need that we have. And I think there's also a way in which it connects us to science. It can kind of be this bridge between art and science that's so desperately needed, like there's these enormous questions at the edge of science now. And I think the way that we answer them is, one, by falling in love with science and scientists and merging them with arts and artists and other. And somewhere in there is the same shit that these magicians, these witches have been working on for hundreds of years, so that's my stuff for the great cauldron of that question. It'll be the full moon in January, assuming all goes well with editing and all that. I wondered if for a full moon in January, and maybe taking into consideration that question we started with, if it's possible to ask you to think about it in this way, people who write to us who are like, some way to declare themselves as a witch, or feeling that they would gain in courage and bravery by coming in that way, but that there's fear. Is there something that we can consider on a full moon in January to give us some courage or something?
That question. I mean, first, I just want to say it's just like you talked about cycles and seasons, and the moon is this timekeeper. So we have our first full moon of the so-called year, right? The Gregorian calendar. And that if someone doesn't feel comfortable in publicly calling themselves a witch or coming out of the broom closet, as it were, that's fine. This practice is for you and for you alone. It's not for anyone else. So if you don't feel quite ready, or if you never feel ready, that's totally fine. There's a lot of like stigma and a lot of projection and a lot of shame that is accompanied with the word witch. All of that being said, what I really love, actually, that came to mind was I do this many moons planner, and I ask for contributions to practitioners. And the full moon suggestion from one of my teachers, Sid Yang, is to call in support and to call in help. So this could be a full moon, feel called to make support, help, community, your signal as it back to one or more people who are also magical practitioners, in the spirit of proclaiming what you need, or being curious about what you'd like to practice and maybe who you'd like to practice with. And when I say who, I mean it could be a pine tree. When you say who I want to practice with, it could be juniper berries. It could be an animal friend. Time to do some meditations on what around in your practice and what ingredients are needed to help you flourish, however, wherever you are.
That's perfect. Thank you. And thank you all for being here and listening with us on this first full moon of this calendar. And I hope that you are safe and you are being loving and caring to yourselves and to each other. And then find Sarah's beautiful book, The Moon Book. Good work. And you can find Sarah on Instagram at Goddess. Are there any other places you want to send the people to find you and connect with you and follow you and work with you?
Yeah, I'm taking an Instagram break, so I think the best way to be in contact with me, is my newsletter. So you can go to my shop, and it is modernwomenprojects.com, and then you can click on the newsletter and viewing what's going on. I also send out tarot spreads and practical advice and magical advice, and I have a podcast. It's called Moonbeaming, and you can subscribe to that as well. And those are the places where you can find me.
Perfect. Thanks for that. I'm going to go sign up for that newsletter. I want a dose of that in my inbox.
You must be a witch.
Hey folks, Risa here again. Just jumping on quick with a friendly reminder that our book is going to be available in bookstores and online and wherever fine quality paper book products, witchy book products are sold. It's a Missing Witches walk through the year with histories of real people and their real magic, and incantations and a bunch of really personal stuff that Amy and I just sort of couldn't help but share as perspective in these kinds of stories. So we would love for you to find and buy that book. And if you've managed to find a local bookseller wherever you are that'll be carrying it or that's interested in it, we love to know. So please tag us on social media at Missing Witches, or shoot us an email if you have stories about witchcraft in your life, in your family, amazing booksellers, or just anything that you think we'd like to know about. Trust that we love every email you send us. So missingwitches@gmail.com. All right, that's it. Love you. Stay safe.